Hello, everyone. Just giving everyone a moment to join in. We'll start in about another minute here, just giving everyone a chance to join. So welcome, everyone. My name is Raven Lee, and I am an enrollment and program specialist at the Data Incubator. We are a fellowship, scholarship, and placement company. We have promised you all an excellent AMA with some of TDI's alumni from various cohorts and locations. So we're excited for everyone to join us. 1 second while I share my screen. Can you give me access to share the screen, please, Nikki?
Should be all set. Raven, you're on mute.
Thank you. Like I said, we are a fellowship, scholarship, and placement company, and we have promised you an excellent AMA panel with some of TDI's alumni from various cohorts and locations. So for the first 40 minutes, I will be asking the panelists questions, and in the last 20 minutes of the session, we will open it up to questions from the audience. I do ask that you please post your questions in the Q&A section to be answered by our panelists. Your questions can be about tips for applying to our program, how to master the coding challenge, financial aid, job placement, the program experience, etc. The chat box will be used for general announcements and resources. Please avoid using the chat box to ask questions for the panelists. We are recording this session and we will be sending a copy to all attendees. As a reminder, our session is an hour long. So if we don't get to all of your questions today, please email us at admissions@thedataincubator and we will be happy to help you. So next, we're going to go ahead and meet our alumni. The first person that we're going to start off with is Jonathan. So I'll go ahead and pass to him and let him introduce himself.
Afternoon, everyone. So I'm Jonathan. As you can all see on the slide, I was at Data Incubator in 2018, and I currently run data science at a startup in DC. And I think the relevant background for everyone to know is immediately prior to the Data Incubator, my PhD background was doing a form of computational climate over at Oxford. So it's a coding focused PhD, and in the years prior to that, I've been working as a strategy consultant in London. Yeah, so for me, the reason for coming into TDI was part of the conversion mixing, having done some very data heavy work in strategy consultancy time and then done computational PhD work. Data science was an obvious choice for me. And then I've ended up thrilled with the work that I do now with Actify Foundry.
That's really good to hear, Jonathan. So we'll go ahead and pass it off to Marcos now and let him introduce himself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Marcus Huerta. You can see kind of what I was going to say there on the screen. I also actually was in the same class as Jonathan back in the before times when we could be in person in DC in the fall of 18. I started at CarMax in January of 19. I did a pretty big career transition. I had been working in science policy in Washington, DC. I was a AAAS fellow, science policy fellow, worked a member of Congress for a year. And then I came to Incubator in fall of 18 to kind of pivot and refresh all my technical skills. So I do pricing algorithms and systems at CarMax. So now I'm a manager of data science here, and I've been here since the Incubator ended. Looking forward to answering your questions.
All right, thanks for that, Marcos. Now we'll go ahead and pass it to Matt.
Hi, everyone. My name is Matt, and I was in the summer 2020 cohort, the online cohort specifically, and currently I'm a data scientist at Comcast, and I work primarily with the entertainment products side of the company. I think there will be time later to talk a little bit more about what I do at work, but in my previous career, I was actually an academic administrator and a research faculty at a university, doing very little statistics or coding or data science and all that. And my training was actually in chemistry and environmental engineering. So I did a huge career pivot into this field. So happy to talk more about that and my experience.
All right, thank you, Matt. And our last alumni, Robert.
Hello, everyone. So my background was in theoretical energy particle physics until 2021. I guess it was the winter cohort, the first one of the year in 2021 that I did. And then I joined DCI Solutions. And now I work on super secret stuff I can't tell you about for the Department of Defense. I'm just kidding. I can tell you some things, and I will.
Thanks, Robert. So now let's go ahead and just jump right into the questions. So can you tell us about your current role and briefly describe what that looks like at your company? And it's okay if all of our panelists answer this question. We want to get into your current role.
Shall we keep it going in the same order?
Yeah.
Yeah, we could start with you, Robert.
Oh, all right.
Mhm.
Well, my current role, I guess, technically, I guess you would say that I'm a senior data scientist, but in reality, it's kind of a mishmash of software development. True data science is probably only 20% or so of my job, mathematics, and algorithm development, I guess, call it like trying to find new ways to solve complicated problems using the research literature and reinforcement learning and things like that.
Okay. All right. And can you tell us about your current role and briefly describe what that looks like at your company, Marcos?
Sure. So I work in core pricing systems, part of CarMax, and specifically the appraisal lane. So CarMax will buy people's cars. We used to do that mostly through the store. People would bring their car to the store. We look at it. We would use algorithms to help inform that offer. But now we're doing a lot of appraisals online, and that is a product I've worked on. That is the product I've worked on mostly since I've been here, with the systems and the algorithms behind the online appraisal product. So now if you go to carmax.com/sell your car, I think is the link, and you type in stuff about your car, and obviously you're getting an answer in a few seconds. No shock that there's computer algorithms are behind that, and that is what my team and I have worked on, both the algorithms and the systems, cloud infrastructure and code that handles all of that.
Thank you. And what about you, Jonathan?
Sure. So the company that I work with now, Actify, that's an AI SaaS business, software as a service. And what we are specifically doing is working with telecoms companies and making the best first offer for people when they first arrive and are looking to purchase. It's a kind of low information sale. As per normal, usual, the agents don't know much about the people who call in. And for various technical reasons that I won't go into for length, that's a difficult conversation to have. And we bring an AI system in that is, given what we can find out about the people fairly quickly, put together a model that says, here is the initial offer you need to make, and then supplementary products to manage various other point of contact interactions. So it's a web of production scale AI systems for a series of clients. And it means my day-to-day, there's a lot of the bread and butter data science around building the product, checking the data, making sure we have dashboards to monitor production systems very effectively, and then the model innovation to improve things over time. We do a lot of reinforcement learning, saving time. There's a complex way we implement that. And then over time, my role has evolved from being the founder, the data scientist who was the first person starting here at the company, to now running a team of 6. So more and more of my time has turned into thinking about data strategy and how to assign team and resources to the problems that we have in this company.
Right, thank you. And you, Matt?
Yeah, so I work for Comcast, and I suppose a lot of you might be customers of the company because just the way ISP works in this country. But I specifically actually works for the entertainment product part of the company. So a lot of their cable products, streaming boxes, and sort of the over the top sort of streaming and all that kind of stuff through the company. I work a lot very closely with the product development teams, and they would have some ideas about things to try to improve or new features on their products, and then we will work with them to make sure that they make data informed process decisions. I would say like my work is generally about like threefold. We spend a good amount of time providing just general product analytics. So, how are people using the product? What are they doing on them and all that kind of fun stuff. We also do fairly traditional data science type, different functionalities that you might expect. I would say our core data science product we provide for different product teams is predictive inference models that help identify sort of levers that triggers, product performance or customer engagement, that type of things. That really ties into the third part of my job, which is we help them design A/B testing and offer end-to-end support. So our inference model will help us identify possible candidates of different parts of the product or different metrics on the product that might move actual customer engagement, but we won't be able to actually establish that causal effect without doing an A/B test. So we help them design the A/B test, and we also help them implement it and post experiment analysis.
All right, thank you. And thank you all for sharing a bit about your current role. I know it's very interesting for our students to just see different ways that they can transition as well. So into the second question, what made you decide to join the Data Incubator program? And all of you can answer this too in no particular order.
I can go. It was a pretty easy call for me because I was between jobs. I worked, like I said, I had worked in science policy in DC for a long time. So had found like a temporary kind of contract position that I had done for like 8 months for a university, but that had wrapped up. And so it was very easy. I've been thinking about it. I actually applied the year before and had been selected as a scholar. I think I got a scholarship in the fall of 2018. So I wanted to transition my career to data science. I wanted to do something where I could leave DC, which I did. I wanted something that I could find work. This is before remote work. So I wanted something where I could work in almost any part of the country or world. And I wanted, I thought it would be a good way. I had taught myself some Python. I kind of taught myself some data science, but I thought I hadn't really done data science in Python. So I thought that like the Incubator was a good place to kind of refresh all those technical skills. I coded in IDL when I was a graduate student, and has anyone on the call even heard of IDL? So it was a really good opportunity for me to brush up on my technical skills and learn some of the tools of data science. My PhD was in astrophysics, by the way. I don't think we ever talked about that, but it was quite some time ago.
All right, do anybody else want to add to this? I see you unmuted yourself, Robert.
Well, yeah, I just wanted to say that, it was kind of a little bit of happenstance that right when I was ready to transition, it was kind of between the Insight program and the Data Incubator, and Insight was surprisingly, like, it just went off the rails. I don't know if it's still off the rails, but it just like disappeared from view because of like everyone in the industry just was like, this is too expensive to keep funding. And so just kind of by chance, the carpet was kind of pulled out from under Insight. And then it was kind of a no-brainer because the Data Incubator and Insight were kind of at the time touted as the two most prestigious programs to transition. And I guess in physics, I also, like Marcos, had kind of a physics background. It's very common to go a data science route, at least if we're specializing in some more theoretical subdiscipline. So it was a very natural thing to do. And I say it every time that I come here, best money I've ever spent. It was a fantastic decision.
Yeah, that's really good to hear, Robert. I'm happy that you enjoyed being at the Data Incubator and you feel like it was just like the perfect thing to do. So do you have anything that you want to add to it, Jonathan?
Sure, I can hop in. I can confirm the same for all physicists now seem to end up as data scientists nowadays. I think at least 3/4 of my undergrad physics cohort now work as data scientists at a range of companies. And for me specifically on the data incubator, I think easy choice. I knew I was committed to going into data science after the PhD. Knew I was moving to DC. My partner had very good reasons to be working in DC after we both finished off at university together, combined with the fact that data incubator had a lot of prestige and was very selective. It was a great putting my first foot forward as a full-time data scientist.
All right, and Matt, do you want to end it off for us?
Sure. Yeah. As I mentioned earlier, that in my graduate studies, I was mostly a wet lab person. So we worked in a chemistry lab, lock ourselves in a dark room, look into a microscope for, 6 hours a day, that type of stuff. Fun, but not very data science or not very statistics. We do have some statistics, like, what you might expect in a quantitative, sort of degree program. But that is to say, I was pretty far from, sort of the what one might expect a traditional candidate might be going into a data science career. So I thought that I needed some, more structured instruction. I did a lot of, spent a lot of time, learning like sort of what you can learn on your own. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, there's a lot of online resources, even from a few years ago when I was, still doing this new. There's a lot of good books out there, but I think what Data Incubator and these type of programs can really offer is the sort of face-to-face, sort of tailored, actual, interaction with experts and structured instruction, which was very helpful, I thought. And I was right, I applied because I thought that it would be helpful, and it was correct.
All right, thank you. So this is going to lead us right into the next question. Can you share a bit more about your experience with the Data Incubator and how the program has been instrumental in your career development? And anyone who wants to can go ahead and answer this one.
I don't want to hog the mic. I can speak briefly. For me, the most important thing with Incubator was, I think as some people probably know, like it's a series of a project, a capstone project, right? Which you have to, I think it's you pitch it as, at least when I did it, you pitched it as part of your admissions process. But anyway, but it's also like every week, it's like 1 week it's beautiful soup and web scraping, the next week it's scikit-learn, the next week it's like how that works. And can you learn something like that in a week? No, but you can kind of almost feel comfortable doing it by the end of the week. And that ability to kind of learn that I knew how to learn, and to remind myself that, yeah, if I focus full time for a week on scikit-learn or neural networks or web scraping, by the end of the week, kind of sort of have like the basics down. And I couldn't do it. It was just a real super helpful, not just to learn those things, but to learn that I could learn, and that I could, if I put my mind to it, really like learn something new, data science very quickly. Which I thought was, to me, that was the most, like, the confident. I remember being really panicked the first week. I'm like, oh my God, so much. And then by the end of it, I'm like, oh wow, yeah, give me something new. Spark, let's go. I can learn that. It'll take me a while, but I'll get it in a week. That was, to me, the best thing about it.
Right. Yeah, I definitely can understand that. A lot of students come in with kind of like this imposter syndrome, and then going through the program, you realize like, oh, I can do this, I can get it, and you just feel better about accomplishing those goals by the end of the program. Did anybody else want to answer that question? Okay. So we'll move on to the fourth question, which I feel like everyone can give some input about. What was your favorite part of participating in the program? Out of all the fun things.
Sure, I'll pick that one up. Oh, sorry, I'm going to go. Pardon me. Sorry, I can confirm I have tested negative for COVID. I just have allergies, so I'm coughing a lot. I think everything Marco said in answer to the previous question is absolutely right. The breadth of material covered as a baseline for anything that comes up. Data science is this weirdly broad field where most jobs do a subset of it, but the full range of things that could be data science is massive, and covering all of that in one go in a fairly organized fashion. So if you're smart, you're willing to learn, and you can remember as you go, you'll be very well set up to talk to almost anyone who's asking to do a reasonable data science job, and aligned with having lots of hand-on time. So if you don't get something, or like have an extension question for like, I'm interested in this and want to talk in a bit more detail, those instructors on hand are a much faster way to upskill than sitting at home trying to do it by yourself and reading Stack Overflow. So a combination of the breadth and having extension opportunities with specialized instructors would be my vote.
Okay, do anybody else want to let us know what their favorite part of participating in the program was? All right. So
Well,
we go
I
ahead.
can say getting a job.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I think that should be emphasized, that you guys have a fantastic network of, I don't know what you call them.
Our hiring partners.
Hiring, thank you, yeah. You have a fantastic network of hiring partners, and that was really helpful to kind of, get over that imposter syndrome we were joking about a few minutes ago, to see that there were a lot of people out there that appreciated me for the skills that I had. Even though clearly, you don't learn everything there is to know about data science in an 8-week course. It was very nice to see that, there was an appreciation for kind of, I don't know how to say it, like a keen hunger to excel and learn and contribute and create value for businesses. So I think, that should be emphasized, that it's really a very different thing for people that don't go through a program like the Data Incubator. Because I had a friend who, no joke, he applied to 50 places. He got rejected from all of them, and only had one interview. And then he did TDI and he got a job. And I knew it was good. I knew that it would work out for him. That's why I recommended it. And I said, this is what you have to do. You have to go to TDI and they'll hook you up. And it worked for him. Now he's with Revelio Labs.
Thank you. Thank you for giving that insight, Robert. I think we try to put a lot of emphasis on like our hire and partner network, but I know it feels different coming from someone who actually been through the program, to let you know our network. We do have a really good network, and we want you to have jobs when you graduate the program. So we're working really hard towards that. So how challenging is the program?
So I think
Well,
this
it
really
depends on your background, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, it really depends on what you bring with you in terms of, I guess, some fundamental understanding of data science concepts, and also just how familiar you are with Python really specifically, because unless things have changed quite a bit, that's the general language you'll be completing many projects and perhaps your capstone in. So I think having some knowledge of that, some familiarity with the language, as well as data science concept, really help a lot without having to kind of play catch up from week to week. I would say that the challenge level for me is the appropriate amount, in a way that things never felt impossible, but it was not easy. When you do have to work hard, there are times when I have to, seek help from various sources, either from my peers in the program, the instructors, or just online and all that kind of stuff. So I would say it's the appropriate amount of challenge.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that it was at the right level for me as well. I mean, I took it very literally, and I said, okay, like, 12-day program to kind of get ready for the actual program. And yeah, I mean, that was not enough time because I didn't really know Python back then. So, if I had to do it all over, maybe I would have spent 3 weeks instead of, 12 days or so. But, at the end of the day, it wasn't a huge problem. And there was kind of a generous amount of guidance in the Python and the Python scripts and the IPy notebooks that were distributed with the course. And so I feel like it was similar experience for me. That, it was very challenging, but in a good way.
Yeah, I would just say that at least when I did it, like it started, like the first week did feel a little overwhelming, and the first week of Cartwright's also felt overwhelming. Like the beginning felt very intense, and then I think the first week was, at least when I did it, was the hardest week, and then two, just I got more used to kind of a rhythm, and you do have to balance a lot of things. You have to kind of come with time management. You have to work on the weekly projects. You have to think about your capstone project. You have to interview and think about your resume. But yeah, it's all manageable. I guess it is when I did it. I mean, I did the full-time course, so it was definitely a full day, and sometimes blended to the evenings a little bit. But I agree with everyone who said that Python really helps. Like if you're learning Python and trying to learn data science at the same time, that's going to make it a little harder. So yeah, if you don't already have something like with Python, like doing I think as was mentioned, there's a 12-day sort of like, here's what you can know about Python sort of thing that gets sent out. I think Robert mentioned. So yeah, definitely spend some time there. I knew Python. I actually did my data science at R, and so I knew some Python, but I had never done data science in Python. So I was kind of straddling the two worlds. Hadn't really used Python as much for example.
All right, thank you, Marcos. And we can move on to the next question. So I know we kind of touched on hiring partners a little, but what job placement resources did you take advantage of while going through the program? And anybody who want to answer this can jump in.
I'm not sure I follow the question actually. What do you mean?
So what job placement resources did you take advantage of while going through the program?
Oh, you mean just like the hiring partner network?
Yeah, just the hiring partner network.
Yeah.
I know you worked with the PRM. So is there anything like mock interviews that you took advantage of, or?
Well, I don't recall them having. Oh no, they did have some of those. No, those didn't help me at all. But it didn't matter. I mean, like I said, I think the point is that there were enough people that were appreciative of the skills that I brought to the table, that my interview skills, probably are still not super awesome, but they were good enough to get me over the finish line.
I feel like I must preface this that I don't know if this is still done the same way. It's been a couple of years since I was in the cohort, but there was I believe there was a third-party company that was engaged with TDI to do resume and cover letter prepping, which I found very helpful because we had one-on-one time with a specialist that was able to like really hammer down and work with the specific consultant I work with really spent a lot of time on the phone and also email, like really specific notes and editing on both the cover letter and my resume. And yeah, obviously since back then, my current resume or CV or whatever and my cover letter, if I put myself on the market, will be quite different. But like I thought it was super helpful because not only do I have something very ready to go that I can like maybe modify for which I did for looking at different jobs, that I think throughout the whole process of discussing with the consultant, I was able to learn a lot about like how to really present yourself in a way that that make yourself in the most true but favorable way to a recruiter, for example. So I thought that was, for me, that was the most helpful part.
Yeah, I'm glad you enjoy those resume writing services. I know we do spend a lot of time, and they spend a lot of time with our students, making sure that they get like the best technical resume for you. Anybody else want to add to any of the resources that they took advantage of? Okay, if not, we could jump right into the next question. So is there anything that you use in your current job that you learned at TDI?
Well, Python. I guess that's the big one for me. I didn't really know
Right,
Python.
Python is big.
So, So yeah, sure. I mean, as far as like, do I use scikit-learn every day? No. But I think it's important for one's development to learn about these basic toolkits. So yeah, I mean, of course, it was critical to learn kind of the core. I didn't even know like what machine learning was really. I mean, I'd heard of it, of course, but I didn't really know it. And so just to get the fundamentals, I think it was extremely helpful. But I mean, do I like specifically like use beautiful soup on a daily basis? No, right? But it's great to know that it's there and how to use it.
Yeah.
Because it may happen one day that I do need it.
I think the important thing to remember is that it's a very relatively short program, very intensive. So it's actually, for me, it was hard to, during the program, to be like really dive deep into every single thing that was discussed. In fact, there just wasn't enough time to cover every single thing that was in the teaching material. And the instructors generally are very smart in picking and choosing what to highlight and all that. Now, the nice thing about it is that I was able to retain much of the materials that was given to us, which I'm sure at this point there's new versions that came out, and a lot of it, what was taught, maybe two years ago, is probably a little bit more outdated. Case in point that I use Spark a lot in my, we deal with very high volume data, but the Spark module, which I very appreciate, because it did cover a lot of concept of the tool itself, it's quite outdated, because the API really updated right after the program. So that's a good example of it's more the concepts and immersing yourself in the ecosystem of the tools that I think is valuable, because I think the tools themselves, the nitty-gritty, do changes. They do, there's new things coming out every day. The old things become new again. I suppose you use pandas or something like that, or something to that effect, from a day-to-day basis, but there's the API changes quite frequently, there's new functionalities and all of that. But I think the key is that the program helps you to understand what's out there and how to really immerse yourself in and understand how to look for the new things and how to understand kind of the intention of these new tools.
Yes, what you said, Matt, save everything, save all the iPy notebooks. It's super useful stuff to just have around in case you need to snip it, because it definitely has happened to me where I like, oh yeah, what is that? And also like all the problem sets that you do, right? So it's definitely happened to me when I'm thinking, what is that snippet that I had from pandas from way back when? And, it's just really great to be able to go and look it up.
Yeah, I think the breadth of the program is an important set of fundamentals, and the fundamentals are always going to be used in the day job. But as everyone was saying, like the exact implementation of what I happen to learn in week 3 of the data incubator is probably not in the day-to-day, but the awareness of it certainly is. I think the way I'm using it most often actually is in interviewing, when I'm interviewing new candidates. A lot of what I can rely on for like, does this person really know data science, is doing deep dives on particular topics, or skimming across several subjects that look a lot like, can someone keep up with me running through like 2 weeks of content on data incubator in an interview. So actually that's where I use the structure of the program most, is I reuse it as a test of how well someone's actually learned their data science before they try and come and talk to me to convince me they can be a data scientist.
No, that's good, Jonathan. All right. So looking back, do you have any advice that you would have told yourself when you were going through the program?
Take the coding challenges seriously.
Yeah.
I couldn't, because it was like too hard for me to do them in real time. But I imagine that if I had already known Python, it would have been extremely useful preparatory material for a large spectrum of job interviews, right? So, I mean, not just data science jobs, but also software development jobs. So, a lot of, it's all in Python. So, if you're trying to do like, Java or Ruby or something else, of course, you'll have to learn the syntax, but kind of just the the way to think about things in terms of dynamic programming, kind of garden variety coding challenges that everyone is expected to know. I mean, this is kind of very helpful and will greatly benefit you in the job market. I mean, I was fortunate that I was able to get a job without having, that level of mastery of Python. I probably still don't have it, a year and a half out from when I was hired, but, I mean, I'm learning all the time and it's going fine for me with what I have under the hood. But, that's just my take, is that I think I wish that I had time and kind of the capacity to do better on those at the time. And I did save all of them. So like I have like a big folder full of HackerRank challenges that I can go back to. But you know how it is. Like once you are busy with your day-to-day, it's hard to find the time to motivate yourself to kind of regularly do self-improvement just for the sake of doing self-improvement.
My answer is related, perpendicular, tangential. Like I would say, like at least when I was there, TDI had like a book on like TDI had intel on what your interview would be like at the hiring partners, and so definitely pay attention to that. Like, because like if especially some partners might expect you to do a coding challenge, some partners might not. Or Carmex is not like it's not the kind of thing we do, right? I'm going to say that right now. So it's certainly, but you're going to apply to a bunch of them. So definitely the coding challenge is important, but just try and get some intelligence. If TDI is still providing it, get that intelligence about what your interview is going to be like, and take every interview seriously, because you never know what company, you might have like 5 companies you're applying to, maybe 3 are your top favorite and 2 you don't know much about, but just try and take all of those interviews seriously and prepare for them as best you can, and try and know what you're expecting. Try and be prepared for what is coming. So I'm trying to say. Know as much about the interview and what they're going to be asking us. And some of that will involve, some companies that will involve using some kind of Python-y coding challenge type thing.
My advice, it's related to the capstone project, and it's 2 main things. And the first thing is, the day you receive that the news that you're accepted the program is the day you need to start thinking about what topic or what the project might be. I think I really struggled with that, and I procrastinated quite a bit. And ultimately thinking back, I felt like my project's topic or the product itself was okay, but like I felt like even given the knowledge I had back then, I could have come up with something that's more more enticing to employers. So I think it's worth it in the days leading up to the program to really come up with a list. It can be as crazy as it wants, because the instructors and your peers are going to help you whittle it down. Just come up with as many ideas that you might have, and that's going to help. Like the more you have, that the more higher probability you can be able to find a project that both is a good one for appearing to showcase your abilities to employers, but also a project that you kind of have some passion about. I think that's very key, because if you're stuck with a capstone project that you just don't really care about qualitatively, it's going to be very painful. So that's the one thing. The other thing is even more specific. I believe that you'll have opportunities to sort of demo your product or your capstone project. I hate doing stuff in advance. Even when I was a grad student, when I go to a conference, when I was defending my dissertation, I kind of just wing it on the spot. Do not do that. I think you will really want to fight against that instinct, if that is your instinct, to wing it. But you actually want to write down exactly what you're going to say, because you have a very tight timeline to really finish demoing your thing. So this is the one time you might actually want to write out a script word for word and just read it out. You can pretend that you have some cadence in your voice so that you're not monotone or whatever, but this is the one time that I encourage. I think a lot of folks in my cohort agree that that really was helpful. So very specific advice to myself, but there it is.
Yeah. I think for going through the program, my chief thought echoes back to when people talk about how difficult the program is. And the key theme being is there's just a large volume of content to get through, and it's a question of your background and what holds you back. So what you should do before or during the course to prepare yourself varies. Like, do you need more business knowledge to understand how to get to the so what of the algorithms you're applying? Maybe think about learning some kind of business strategy or business 101, so you're not stuck in a lecture being like, I don't have the context to understand this material. Or is it your Python fundamentals going to hold you back because you've already know how to code but not well in Python? Or do you not understand enough statistics to keep up with the other three? Whatever it is, and I think those are the three most important ones: business knowledge to apply the data science, Python specific knowledge to apply what you know in the language that we're using, or the statistics that underlies all data science, because data science is just a new slang term for doing statistics at scale and quickly. That's getting through the program. And the other one I'd highlight, which has been a theme in other answers about sort of capstones in your own project work, I think your GitHub page is surprisingly important. And if you are putting code up on GitHub, which your capstone probably should be, having a level of professionalism in that presentation. If you put your GitHub on the CV and someone clicks through to your GitHub page and it looks good, that matters. First impressions are super important. If I click in on your GitHub page and see the code and the code looks good, meets professional coding standard, has appropriate sort of commenting and data types in the signatures, that matters. And you should really think about doing that on your GitHub page if you at all have the time. And after the data incubator, it's well worth doing to tidy up what is in your GitHub so it looks more and more like that. And I would try and deprioritize things that look like I've done data science 101 and put up the same pro forma project as everyone else. That is kind of anti-pattern to getting a job a lot of the time. You want to have material up on your GitHub page that looks like you have a genuine interest and have done something a little bit unique.
100% agree on the GitHub comment. It's not determinative for me, but I do. If you're linking to it on your resume, it needs to. You want people to see something cool when you click on it. It can't just be a clone repo that you never touched, or a simple 101 data science notebook. Like, polish it up, make it look good. And it's it's not the end of the world if you don't have that. Just don't put it on your resume then. Like, if you want people to click on it, make there be something good after you click on it.
Yeah, 100% agree. I think it's a real professionalism question. If you have a GitHub page linked that then doesn't look like anything at all, no GitHub is not necessarily a problem, or a GitHub with a small amount of good stuff. It scales according to the experience of the candidate. But a GitHub that I look at and a question like, why did you think this was going to impress anyone? I find very, very bizarre.
Thank you. All right, so are any of you currently in a position where you're looking to hire a data scientist? If so, what are some qualities that you look for?
I can speak to this. I do well, and Jonathan too, probably. So sorry to take off, Jonathan, because I do look at resumes and I do first round interviews here. It's really about Jonathan put it well earlier. Like, there is some business sense that is helpful. I think like thinking about how all this statistical knowledge, how can I apply that to business problems? But we're looking for analytical ability. We're looking for problem solving skills. Obviously, most TDI candidates have we know that they've gone through Python and stuff. They've gone through Python. We talked about the GitHub page, but generally what you're looking for is taking that knowledge and having applied it to something. So it could be, when I'm looking at resumes, like an interesting project where you're describing what you did and what it accomplished. Obviously, if you have some work experience that's relevant, maybe from your PhD or whatever. Just we just want to see obviously the resume gets you to the interview, and then the interview you have to just do well and whatever interview process is. But just evidence that you have either that you've taken that analytical and quantitative abilities that you've got presumably from your undergraduate research and applied them in some way to data science problems. Honestly, frankly, a lot of the things you'll get out of doing TDI is something. That answer something was better in my head, and then I realized I'm talking to a bunch of TDI people who are going to get a lot of interesting projects and things to do. Anyway, Jonathan, maybe you have a better answer.
I'm not sure about better. I completely agree about all of that. And yeah, for context, I've been out of TDI. I went to Foundry, which is an AI studio. People can look at foundry.ai and sort of work out how that studio model works. but I was involved in hiring with Foundry, and then a company that came out of Foundry called Actify, and I've probably interviewed a couple of hundred, probably in the sort of 350 to 450 candidates I've looked at as data scientists in that period. I think any company that's looking for data scientists, there'll be a question of data scientist in abstract does not exist. It is a question of what does that company want to do? And they want to find the data scientist that fits that mold. So a lot of the time, that will be questions of what is the business problem you're trying to solve? If you're talking to the candidate, are they capable of intelligently taking the world that might exist and formulating it into some kind of logical structure that can be solved through code and mathematics? That is an absolutely key skill that everyone should have to be able to interview well. You may get a purely technical set of interviews that only care about your coding skills, but I'd say that's pretty rare. And I'd say a lot of the best data science jobs that have growth potential will be the ones that care about your ability to think strategy and structure. So think about that a lot. That's really important. The other thing that I'd say that I care about a lot specifically, and I think is pretty common, if I'm hiring a data scientist, there was all of the coding chops and data strategy that I just spoke about, but before that, above anything else for any role I'm hiring in, be it data scientist or anything in the company, number one rule is there's a very famous phrase of like, don't hire nasty people, that tends to have a swear word at the end. So that is making sure that people who you hire are team players, that you have a pleasant personality, that you can fit in well with a team, that you're going to be a generous collaborator with the people around you. That's more important than anything else. You could be the best coder in the world, but if you're not able to function well in a team, you'd never get a foot in the door. So being able to practice that in interviews to come across well as a person, I think is super important. And you should have all of those sort of STAR method type questions, situation, task, action, response, when people ask you for examples of your working style, ready to go. Because they're typically a strong filter if you're organized, if you're interviewing at a company that has put thought into its interview process.
Yeah, definitely Google STAR method or whatever it's called, situation, task. I already forgot the action results. Yeah, definitely look that up and have that ready to go when you're thinking about it. So,
I guess my one answer to that is there's not really any secret formula to make you stand out from other data scientists. Unfortunately, that's a boring answer. It's a market that's kind of competitive right now. So I guess my best advice to really myself too, if I ever go back onto the market, is you have to be very patient and persistent, and just know that, you have to keep trying, and, try not to be discouraged. Obviously all the things that was just being said are all valid, but just, also just, we have to understand the reality is that there's just so many folks who recognize that this is a attractive field for them to get into. So it's, there's just a lot of folks out there looking for these type of jobs. So we have to understand that.
Okay, well, thanks for your input. So now we're going to get into the Q&A. A lot of our potential students asked a lot of good questions. So I'll go ahead and read the first question, and whoever think they can answer or want to answer it can go ahead and jump in. So in your first job, I'm sorry, that's not the first question. Do the problems you are working on change frequently, and the tools that you are using to solve them? How did this program help you in this sense?
I think I missed the last word. I'm sorry. Can you say it again, Ruby?
Yeah, and it's the questions are in the Q&A box as well.
Oh, it is. Yeah, right.
So the first one is, do the problems you are working on change frequently, and the tools that you use, and the tools that you are using to solve them? How did this program help you in that sense?
Oh, yeah, right. That makes sense. I'm sorry, I just missed that one.
It's okay.
I got you. All right, well, I guess since I'm talking, I can take a crack at this. Let's see what to say. Well, I mean, it's just the fundamentals, like really. I mean, my work doesn't have much to do with the sort of machine learning that we focused on, but it's just that you have to understand what machine learning is about before you can do something at the research level. I mean, you have to master the fundamentals, and I think that's what it's really all about.
Okay.
You know, so I mean, my work is more focused on what's called reinforcement learning, which has, you know, basically zero to do with anything. I mean, except for maybe like, you know, stochastic gradient descent that we studied in the program, but that's just the way life is, right? I mean, you start with the easier things, and then as you progress, you learn harder things.
Yeah, I guess I was about to say something similar. It's the concepts and the fundamentals that matters the most. It's hard to say from one job to the other how dynamic it might be. I would say my job's fairly dynamic, where we have a lot of different product teams. They all kind of have different ideas about different things. And the tools you would use to solve them might also vary quite a bit from company to company. Some company might already invested in certain platforms, and you'll be, like it or not, that's what you're going to be using, you know? Whereas if you are just doing your capstone, you can kind of do whatever you want, right? So it's more important, I think, to take from the program transferable things, you know, concepts, fundamentals, and that type of things.
Right. So did your PhD make any difference in your status at work?
Hugely depends. So I've been through quite a large breadth of people who I worked with, because I started off doing these engagements with lots of large companies. To stereotype, you can have the equivalent of you're sitting in a room full of MBAs who lead business divisions or CEOs, and they really couldn't care less about a PhD. Doesn't matter to them. They will judge you on the content of the meeting. They might have a concern that you're a little bit too nerdy. There are other situations. I did some work in renewable energy and was talking to a lot of people involved in the engineering of wind turbines, and the fact that I had a PhD, they clearly liked, and I'm pretty certain some of them looked up the kind of atmospheric modeling and climate work that I'd done, and that gave me a huge credibility boost with those guys. So it entirely varies according to the culture of the workplace you go into, how important the PhD is. I think most of the time it's a first impressions type thing when you are introduced to someone, how they conceive of a PhD, and within a month to 6 weeks of work, most of what level sets is your ability to perform on the job.
I would say that so I guess I worked for like a very traditional, like big giant media company. I guess unless people stalk me on LinkedIn, they wouldn't know that I have a PhD or whatever. And there are literally one other person that I know of that put, you know, the word PhD in their Slack handle or like email, you know, signature. I feel like that's a bad look. It's not the place or setting for that, I don't think. If people do find out, they will form their own perception of you. But it's not, at least in my workplace, it's not how, you know, sort of people place value in or like figure out what your status is or whatever, whatnot, for better or worse. That is not to say that you know, your graduate work and the degree program that you spend so much of your time and resource in is not valuable, but it's just not officially recognized by the company as like, oh, he has, you know, they have like a whatever, you know. And I suspect that if you try to make it a thing, it don't really go over well. But, you know, that is not to say that the people you work with, if they do find out, might not think certain things about one way or the other of you.
All right. So we'll go ahead and move to the next question. We probably have time for about 2 or 3 more questions. It's a question here that 2 questions that's very similar. So what were your capstone projects about? How did you choose an idea for your project? So basically, just what advice would you give someone that's brainstorming capstone project ideas?
Okay, choosing the topic and the nature of the project itself, I feel like it's the hardest part. Once you pick something and you got it approved, then you just go do it, right? You know, yeah, it might be hard and whatnot, but I feel like it's one thing if you are trying to make nothing out of something, make something out of nothing, or once you have the idea, you're just trying to implement it, right? So the biggest advice I can give, and also to myself back then, is to figure out what you're interested in. It can be in really anything. Like we've had people looking into specific like hobbies of theirs, music and whatnot. I did a project that is related to string quartet music, for example, that I was very, heavily engaged with, away from my, day job. So pick, just start thinking about what do you do for fun, and what are some sort of the terrible word to use here in business speak is pain point, or sort of like what's the thing that annoys you about that prevents you from fully enjoying what you enjoy doing, and is that something that can be overcome by some kind of data situation? So that type of direction, because that's going to help you to land and find a project idea that you are like, you have the passion to actually go solve. You might not be able to like completely solve it, for the given amount of time and resources, but it'll get you, into a spot where you have something presentable that you are very excited to show people for. So, I would say follow that framework, come up with as many ideas. They can be as pie in the sky as seemingly impossible as possible, and then we could, the instructors and maybe your peers can help, shape that and whittle that down to something that is manageable.
Okay, thank you. All right, so many of you mentioned the importance of Python knowledge. What resources do you recommend to learn it?
Hopefully some people have. I think I taught myself Python before the incubator on Code Academy, which I think completely changed how their business model works. So hopefully people have some good resources. To me, like it kind of relates to what Matt just said about your capstone. Like you can really learn by doing. So you kind of have to think of something, a project to give yourself. Like, yeah, you can do some online courses, and that's all great. But like, boy, if you can like think, hey, I really would like to build this Plotly Dash app, or I'd really like to figure out how to parse this API. I don't know. If you have something that you care about that's interests you, that, and then you take the Python that you maybe learn some Python in an online resource, and then you try and apply it to something that you actually want to solve for yourself. Well, that's really the best way to learn how to code. I mean, you learn by necessity. Like my Python skills, it's like a hockey stick graph since I got here because I had to learn Python to like do my job, right? But so you can't obviously give yourself a job that way, but you can say, hey, well, I really want to solve this problem for myself. So I'm going to use the Python that I learned in this formal way to solve this problem for myself.
There are a lot of good resources out there. I actually use books the old-fashioned way because I find that they are structured very nicely, and there's sometimes like a cool project that don't really have an answer to, and you kind of work through the whole thing yourself with enough guidance. I find that was very helpful to me, but I guess it really depends on what works best for you. There's a lot of good online courses, some even free, lots of good videos on YouTube. But practice makes perfect. Start coding, and there's good practice site out there. The one that I think TDI uses is HackerRank, but there's also like LeetCode and all that kind of stuff. So the resources that are out there, just go and do it and just keep doing it and you'll get better.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's actually, the program itself is pretty good. I mean, for me, at least, that was a very nice jumpstart. 12-day program will teach you kind of basic syntax and constructs, and then you'll practice using them. For me, I guess, I was focused more on my capstone than on the coding challenges, but there's kind of enough code thrown at you during the program that I think it's a pretty good platform, and you get a lot of exposure that way. And then beyond that, I agree with Matt. I think sites like HackerRank and LeetCode are great. So that would be my recommendation, I guess.
All right, well, it is at the top of the hour. I do want to thank all of the panelists for sharing their insight and just your experiences with us. Thank you all for attending this info session as well. Just as a reminder, we will be sending out the recording. So if you would like to rewatch this, you'll be able to do so when we send that email. Give us about 24 to 48 hours to send it to you. Also, our application deadline is this Friday. So if you want to apply for our winter cohort, go ahead and submit your application by Friday. The coding challenge will be due Monday by 7:59 p.m. Eastern time. And of course, you can apply from our website. We will share this link in the chat for your convenience. We weren't able to get to all of the questions today, but if you do have any other questions, then feel free to send us an email at admissions@thedataincubator.com. And with that, I'll go ahead and let you all go. Again, thank you for attending. All right, have a nice day.
All right, goodbye, everyone.
Bye.